Hello, I'm Amy from moonmindology.com, and today I'm looking at the potential of Nigel Farage winning the next UK election. The next United Kingdom general election is scheduled to be no later than Wednesday the 15th of August 2029, so it could be anywhere from 2028 to 2029. Of course, I'm just saying that I have a feeling that we may be seeing a geopolitical turbulence around this time. We could also have the potential of an election being postponed due to a national emergency, as I'm wondering if there could be a potential conflict around there. But it could be as simple as a financial event. We can explore that a little bit today. Keir Starmer. This chart is one that I have rectified, so I can't guarantee that it is correct. Either way, I do think it fits relatively well. So to push this further, Jupiter is quite an evil planet as it's placed in the 12th house and rules the 6th. When Jupiter was starting to move into Gemini, it was beginning to aspect Venus, the 4th house ruler, in the 4th house, and this is linked to property. Interestingly, Keir Starmer had some of his properties and a car that he'd recently sold set on fire. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. And that is because Jupiter also rules the 9th and Venus is so strong. As he is a lawyer and a rich one, we can take a guess that Starmer is karmically very lucky at winning against opponents. Even in the case of arson, he came out with limited damage and he is already very strong. As this matches, we will have to take a bet, that this is the correct ascendant sign because I don't have anything better. And I also matched up the marriage dates and his successes, so we will just go ahead and use his D10 anyway. So the D10 is the Dashamsha, and this is about the career and his successes. And if we look at this chart, this is why I moved the time back to 3:55 a.m. because during the Mars Dasha, he had a major setback, but equally a success during the Bhukti of Jupiter. Why? Well, Mercury rules his 1st and 10th in the D10, and Jupiter is in the 10th, which when activated will give him great power. Mercury can also bring negative events, as that's in the 12th house. K2 can also be a problem for his career, but he will be very good at networking. So he's currently in the Dasha of Saturn and Jupiter, but from March 2026, he will be going into the Mahadasha of Mercury. So he's going to be very powerful then. Between August 2028 and 2029, he will lose power because he has the Bhukti of K2. So this could be a time where he loses an election, and this does match up with dates for the election. If we go back to the Rashi or the D1 chart, Mercury is very strong in the 3rd house of communication, but it does own the 12th house. It's afflicted by both Mars and K2, which can cause a lot of problems for him. This is a mixed planet and people may not be able to understand his ideas and communications during the Mercury Dasha. Nigel Farage. He has a good birth time and I don't feel that we need to change or rectify that. Nigel is currently in the Dasha of Rahu and Venus. So if we look at his D1 Rashi chart, Venus is very powerful in the 10th. So this is going to be really positive time for his career. Rahu is in the 11th house and he is incredibly strong. And this is an amazing Mahadasha to build a following and make influential friends. Rahu in the 11th, this is why he rubs shoulders with very influential and powerful people. Most people wouldn't be able to mix with politicians at this level. He mixes with Donald Trump. And so he is clearly in a very powerful position and he knows his way to weasel to the top. Now, I want to take a look at the D10. I did wind his time back a little bit from 4:30 to 4:26 in order for it to coincide with his life a bit more. So in 1985, he was run over and injured, which obviously impacted his work. He was in the subdasha of Saturn, which is debilitated in the D10 chart. Venus is very strong and as the main dasha, so it's strong, but that Saturn was difficult. So in May 2010, he had a plane crash, which was, obviously an upsetting event which impacted his work. And he was in Mars and Ketu. Mars isn't terrible, but Ketu is with Saturn, so it has that evil influence. Private transport is also associated with the 4th house, which is where Saturn and Ketu are in the D10. In November 2017, he was accused of misusing EU funding. Once again, he was in the Bhukti of Saturn, so we know that Saturn is a difficult planet for his career. And the reason I say that Nigel is born before 430 is down to his popularity. If his D10 was controlled by Aquarius, he would be most powerful during the dashas of Mars. And his Mars period was okay, but his Rahu dasha brought him into the limelight, and in the adjusted D10, it is in his 10th house. The ruler of the 10th is Venus, so we would expect that Farage would be still very popular during this time. Is going to be at the peak of his career, or is he? He moves into the Sun dasha in March 2027 until January 2028, and in his D1, the Sun sits in his 8th house with Mars. And in the D10, it sits in the 5th house, but it owns the 8th house. So he could have some scandals around this time, and there could be some setbacks as well as accidents. Looking at the period of the next general election, when that will be called, he will be in Rahu and the Moon. Why is this significant? The Moon is in the 1st house of the D10, and Rahu is in the 10th. So his dashamsha is going to be fully activated. This period lasts January 2028 until July 2029. So if the election occurs within this time and there is not another candidate who is stronger than him, I do believe that he could win. Keir Starmer will be in the sub-cycle of K2 from August 2028 until the 19th of August 2029, which leaves Sir Starmer 2 days before the cut-off. So he's going to have a real rough time in the last year of his term if he stays in. But if he really wants to stop Farage from getting in, he should call an election before Nigel's Bhukti changes. But I'm very sure that Nigel is having both his 1st and 10th houses activated in his D10th. And that's really strong. Rahu's dispositor is exalted in the 3rd, which is incredibly strong. But he has a weakness. The Moon is disposited by a debilitated Saturn. And this is his weak spot. So there could be accidents, or there could be something that is affecting his popularity potentially. And then we move back to Starmer. His Mercury rules the 1st house and his 10th house as well. So this is so strong. But Mercury is in the 12th house of endings and going behind the scenes. So his career will be heightened, but there could be a change or an ending. K2 is in the 6th house, and this is deposited by a very strong Saturn, and it's a close one. But Starmer has 2 Dastana links, and Farage has an exalted planet and a debilitated planet with no links to the evil houses. But looking at the transits in 2028, the most important planets to look at is Rahu and Ketu. After August 2028, Rahu and Ketu will be in Sagittarius and Gemini. So that means Ketu will be in Starmer's 12th house and Rahu will be in Nigel's 5th. It really does look as if things are working more in the favour of Farage. I just want to entertain the other outer planets as well. Saturn will be debilitated at this time, and I think that we will be seeing a significant problem with global finances, Saturn stability and structure overall. So it will be poor at this time. Saturn will be in Starmer's 10th house, which can have a negative impact on his public persona, his status and work. Meanwhile, it will be in Farage's 9th house of overcoming problems. However, it can mean that he makes poor decisions. And I do think that looking at these transits and the dashas, life is unfortunately going to get worse in the UK. And I think it will be enough to push a small party right to the top. But I mean, that's, you know, that's also tells us that the Conservative Party failed the British people, and Labour Party will too, if that's the case. It's a failure of all their normal parties. Jupiter will be in Virgo, which happens every 12 years. But I think we could be in for a major change in politics. Why do I say that? 12 years before, it would have been 2016, and we had a referendum for Brexit that brought change. Prior to that, it was 2004, and there was a significant change in the policy of the government, and there was a referendum in the north of England. And then you go back to 1902, and there was a lot of political unrest, and then we changed from 13 years of Conservatives to the Labour Party. Prior to that, 12 years before, it was the birth of Thatcherism. So we could well be looking at a significant turning point for politics in the UK. What makes people unhappy? Not having money. So I do think that there is a strong possibility that this will impact the country. Quickly looking at the Brexit chart and the chart of Starmer's government, I have the government chart from 2024. I don't like the ninth house. It's all over the place, and people are liable to lose their heads as Uranus and Mars are sitting on a goal. This is crazy, and between January 2028 and August 2029, Rahu will aspect these planets, creating an extreme situation. And this could be as wild as terrorism as it is in the house of religion. Jupiter will also be crossing this point, which will create extreme situations. And Jupiter rules two angles, so it can bring out negative things. There can be arrogance and extremism. And this could be like a civil war of sorts. Jupiter will be going over the ascendant of this chart, which can bring trouble to the nation. Ketu will also be transiting the sun, which can make the nation and the leader very weak. And this is concerning transit. Hopefully Jupiter will retain some of its benefic properties and act as a barrier for the ascendant of this chart. And this could save the nation from a physical war. There is something that could really impact the ninth house, as Pluto is going to aspect Venus, and this can bring a transformation. The other side of that is that Venus also rules the second house of money, and we could be looking at the major change in the way that finance and money is handled. Lastly, on the topic of money, Saturn will be debilitated in Aries and aspecting the moon. And there is a nice Paravartana between Venus and the moon, which is very strong for getting money and investment from others. But the moon is unstable. So the finances of the UK are going to be unstable for the next 4 to 5 years. Saturn aspecting the moon is going to be difficult. And I believe that the UK will hit a financial problem during these years. The Brexit chart. It does have similarities, and I am concerned about Saturn crossing the 8th house in both of these charts. Not only that, Saturn will transit the moon, and that could bring scandals as well as problems with alliances and friends. So there could be things concerning tax as well as more troubling things from the 8th house. There's also a nodal inversion, which could be a time of gains, but it could be a time of losses. I'm not sure which one it could be, as it's going to be the first time for this chart. It's going to be impacting the 4th and the 10th houses though, so we could see land prices and how the country is being perceived as being a really hot topic. Ketu will also aspect and afflict the first ruler during this period, so this is not going to be good for the strength of the country. Rahu is going to transit the sun, which can make the leader behave in an extreme manner because it's an affliction. So, you know, there can be other weaknesses there too. How very interesting. We will have to see. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.